3. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Remembering Muizenberg. I think we're up to season 2, episode 5. It's getting hard to count all these numbers. But what I can say is that there are very interesting speakers today, one from San Diego, one from across the road. So I'd like to thank Marlene as well as Celia and Gerald for gracing us with your presence, but more importantly, with your memories. And that is no small feat, which is bringing up memories of yourselves when you were children and of your parents and of other people that you knew. And that's why everybody loves it, because it's not easy to remember ourselves. So thank you so much for being here. Before I give you, Marlene, the stage, I would just like to say that all of this is in anticipation for the centenary celebrations, which are happening at the end of the year. And I very much look forward to that. We know that we're starting it on the 28th of December, and we know that it's going through January the 4th. I already have the events and the schedule. The only reason I haven't said it is I'm just waiting for approval from the security out there, because we are having quite a few dignitaries. So I can't give away who those dignitaries are at this point, but I will say we are having local as well as international dignitaries coming in for the centenary. And more people are telling me by the week that they are coming in from overseas. The Johannesburgers for sure are going to be here in mass anyway, but from overseas, there's quite a lot already coming. So I do think it's going to be the biggest reunion that Muizenberg has had since the heyday. So those of you who are on the fence, seriously start thinking about it. I do have travel plans and things like Uber drivers, approved Uber drivers, and places to stay, and flights and rental cars and all that type of information. So if you want that, please ask me, muizenberg.schul@gmail.com, and I can send you all that information as well to help you plan your trip. Thank you. That's all I have to say. Marlene, thank you from San Diego at 7 a.m. It is June gloom, so I'm not sure that the sunrise is out yet for you, but thank you for waking up early, and it was a pleasure to speak to you last night, and go ahead.
Thanks very, very much, Rabbi Ryan, and hello to everybody, people I can see, and I love seeing my sister there among everybody else. Hi, Nettie. Anyway, so thank you very much for asking me to speak, Rabbi. And, you know, when I think about it, I've watched some of the other speakers, and I see it's like in each age group, it's like each group have got our memories, and there seems to be a common denominator for everybody. And it seems as if it's like passing the baton from those in their 80s and their 70s and me in my late 60s. And we've all got memories to share and keep memories alive. So I'm going to speak about people in my life who influenced me and who made impression on me growing up. And I'd say it's primarily my family and friends, but also I really do believe that it takes a village, and we're all the product of one wonderful village. So I was born September the 6th, 1954 at the Booth Memorial in Oranjezicht. And my parents were Abe and Pearl Davis, that many of you know. My brother is Stan Davis, that they call Doves sometimes, and I think he's still called that by some of his friends. And my sister Annette, who we call Nettie. And then our granny also lived with us. She was Esther Reiner Herman, that we called Boba. And when I came home, the name of our house was Stanette. And I never took offense that they didn't change the name of the house to include me. But I see Linda on the call, and I was going to say that the Franks, round the corner from me, could have also called their house Stanette, because they also had a Stanley and Annette. They lived in Yarmouth Road. Now I think of Yarmouth Road, and I can actually picture who lived where. I knew everyone in our community. I knew everyone who lived up and down the roads between Clifton and Windermere, and everyone along the roads too. And even if they didn't know me, I invariably knew them. So I can probably say that for most people on the call today, if you didn't know me until now, I probably know you or your family. Plus, I knew the folks who lived across the bridge and across the railway line. So there was a very strong, big community. I was raised mainly by my Boba, And she used to make me breakfast in the morning, tasty wheat with chocolate sprinkles and white bread cut into squares that I used to dip into cocoa to make chocolate bread. So without any kind of effort on my part, my nickname used to be Fatty. Now, my family didn't call me that, but I used to be called that by the gardeners and the domestic workers walking to work past our house every morning. And I used to always be outside because I didn't go to nursery school. For some reason, my parents didn't send me. And the upside of that is that I spent my formative years with my Boba. So she used to take me with her to visit her friends. And in the summer, we used to go to either the Rio Grande or the Balmoral to have tea with her friends or relatives. And she also took me to visit her friend, Mrs. Sonia Walshonok. She was an old, wispy woman who lived on the less prosperous side of Cromer Road. Mrs. Walshonok, her husband used to be the shachet, and I remember he used to walk from False Bay Station with brown paper packets, and I remember he used to have livers in those packets. And the reason I knew is because he sometimes used to give a gift of a liver to Boba. We used to go to Mrs. Walshonok's house, and she had a sepia-toned house, and she had a samovar on her sideboard, and she used to pour tea from the samovar. And we used to sip tea out of saucers with sugar cubes in our mouths. I learned all this when I used to hang around with my granny. And so, they used to talk in Yiddish, and I didn't really know what they used to talk about. But my granny told me that she'd been a medical student back in the old country. And I always found it very interesting to go to her house. It was like entering another world. Then Sundays, my father used to take us to Mr. Rath's for toffee apples every Sunday after lunch. So between the toffee apples and the sugar cubes, I went to Dr. Eisman for my first filling when I was about 6. And it was absolutely frightening, but I remember having gas, but it didn't put me off eating all the sweets of our youth, the sweetie pies and the bar ones and the texters. I was a big sweets fan in my youth. Then Boba's other great friend, apart from the Walshnoks, was Mrs. Jankelovitz. Mrs. Jankelovitz her children were Auntie Rose Jonas, who some of you probably know, and her sister Salome, also two Muizenbergers. And we spent many a Pesach with the Jonases. And we also sometimes had Pesachs at the Ashkelon Hotel with the Galanskis. And Anne Galansky used to phone my mom almost every Friday afternoon. And she used to say, Good Shabbos, Pearlie. She was a very good friend of my mother's. And I know my mom always said that Anne was incredibly kind to them. The Galanskis were very, very kind to them when they moved to Muizenberg in 1948. So the friendship with the Galanskis, and it was very incredible for me, really, after my mom passed away, because Merle was the person who did the mitzvah preparing my mom for burial. And it was almost like a full circle of community involvement. So when I hung out with Boba, we also used to listen to her music. So instead of going to nursery school with my peers and learning Hebrew songs and playing in the sandpit, I used to listen to her Yiddish music, and "Who nimmt mir a bissel a mazel, who nimmt mir a bissel a glick." They were really kind of somber kind of songs for a little girl. But I still had lots of fun. I had lots of playmates and lots of fun at home with my siblings. So it wasn't all sepia-toned youth. There was a lot of diversity and different age groups, and I really got to know a lot of things about, like in my youth, that a lot of my peers didn't get to know. In the early years, my dad used to travel. He was a traveler, and he had a driver called Courtman, and Courtman sometimes used to drive us when we went on vacations as well. And he used to teach us words in Xhosa, and I remember getting to our destinations and never really giving it much thought as to where Courtman would sleep, we had our hotel room, but he was always there in the morning with a car. So, we didn't really understand about racial issues back in those days. I remember.
Sorry, Marlene. Sorry to interrupt, Marlene, but you went on to mute for some reason. Can you just unmute yourself? One moment, everyone. There we go. You're back.
Okay, so in 1961, South Africa, when South Africa became a republic, I remember at Muizenberg Primary School we had a assembly, and in those days we didn't have a school hall, and the assembly was held in 2 classrooms where the folding doors were pushed aside. And I just remember getting medal. We all got medals, and I think the stem was sung, but it all went way over my head at the time. When my dad used to come in from work, sorry, I'm jumping about a bit, but I'm just getting all these memories. Every day when my dad came home from work, he used to change into his bathing costume, put on his yellow toweling gown, and take olive oil and cotton wool in his pocket, and we all used to pile into the car and go to the beach. Summer, winter, rain or shine, it was a ritual. And I think my dad was one of the original beach lovers. That we've got a great appreciation for the beach, and we used to go practically every day of our lives. My dad, he also had his brothers living in Muizenberg, 2 of his brothers. There was Simon, Uncle Simon Davis, and his wife Rose. They lived in Gloria Heights and Axminster Road, Muizenberg. And Uncle Simon used to come over every Sunday morning and late morning before lunch, and he and my dad would have a whiskey together. And then there was also Uncle Izzy. His wife was Rose, and she was the daughter of Fanny and Charlie McCarthy. And Uncle Izzy lived in Muizenberg for a while as well. And then when he came back to Muizenberg, they eventually moved to Joburg. And when he came back to Cape Town, he and my dad were best friends, and they used to speak to each other every day. And Izzy would often be my dad would often be mistaken for Izzy by Joburgers because they looked absolutely identical. So often on the beach, people would speak to my dad, and he didn't know who on earth they were till he realized they were Izzy's friends from Joburg. And my dad had other siblings. There was Uncle Alfred, Auntie Lily, Auntie Ethel, and Uncle Harry, who all lived on the Atlantic side, and Uncle Louis, who lived in London. My mom was an only child. She grew up in Johannesburg, and she came down to Cape Town, and she married my dad in 1948 at Morero at Shul, and they moved to Muizenberg after that. They could have chosen, if they wanted. They had Uncle Alfred was in Camps Bay, Uncle Izzy and Uncle Simon were in Muizenberg, and so my dad chose Muizenberg. And I'm very glad he did.
Sorry, Marlene, you went on to mute again. Sorry, Marlene, you're going to have to go on to unmute. I don't know why that keeps happening.
Okay, so my kids, Nettie and Stan and I, there's a 3.5 year and 5.5 year age gap between me and them. But we were still best of friends, even in our youth. We used to hang out together, and Nettie used to teach. She played school with me and taught me to read and write and do sums. And Stan used to take me with him to play marbles at the field next door to the Liebrecht house. It was they lived on the corner of Yarmouth Road and Dartmouth Road and Windermere Road. And I know to this day, Stan's still friends with some of those guys who used to play marbles with him on the field. And I just wanted to say about Lottie Liebrecht. She always reminded me of Audrey Hepburn. She was like this high cheekbones and really pretty, and I just remember her very well, among many of the others as well. Stan and Nettie, when we were older, they used to take me to concerts with them, and it was a big highlight. Nettie, I remember taking me to see the Birds at the Alhambra, David Crosby. And she used to take me to the Greenpoint Arts Center to see Dollar Brand on many a Sunday night, and that was always incredibly exciting for me. And Stan used to take me to the Pig and Forries and discos, not discos, yeah, there were some discos, and also we used to go to concerts at Tree Arts, and I was always very chuffed to be the young sister being schlepped about by my siblings. I felt very proud of myself. In the late 50s, I must just go back, that my first friend in Muizenberg was Karen Berghaus. And she's still my great friend. She lives in San Diego, and we're very good friends to this day. Karen, I used to go and play with her practically every day before we started school. She lived first in Watson Road near the False Bay Station. And then they moved to the Row. Her dad, Uncle Jack, was the first health fanatic that I knew. I knew about Gus Levine, of course, but I didn't know him. But Uncle Jack used to lift weights in the garage, and I remember he was always very health conscious before his time, before anyone else that I knew. And next door to the Berghouses were the Israelsons, and Lovell and Matthew were also very good friends of my parents. And Marlene was Nettie's first friend, and they are lifelong friends to this day. And one thing about the families in Muizenberg, you know, we were friends with the people that we were friends with were almost like extended family, because we knew everything about them. We knew their parents and their cousins and aunts and uncles and their grandparents. So we were very integrated and had a very close relationships with our Muizenberg friends. Something that people may not know, that it was highly embarrassing for me, but in the late 50s, some of the Muizenberg moms used to bring hot lunch to their children who were at Muizenberg Junior School. So come big break, there was a lineup of cars, including my mother's old Austin with a running board. And the siblings used to come out of school and jump into the cars and have hot lunch. Now I remember my mom used to bring cottage pies with hot steaming potato crusts, and the siblings used to come and eat lunch. And I remember I was very aware there were kids hanging on the fence, other kids just hanging on the fence and watching these pampered Jewish children being fed by their Yiddish mamas. But thank goodness when I started sub A, this odious practice ended, because my mother got a job. She was working half days for Floyd and Emery, the Cape Town architects. So I could take Oros in a flask and sandwiches like a normal kid. I was highly relieved about that. At school, we had religious instruction and scripture, I think it was called. So what happened is that the Jewish children from both classes in our standard used to be sent into one classroom, and our classmates into another classroom, and we all were taught in our separate testaments. And one day, I think it was in standard 3, the girl who was sitting next to me we had shared two-person desks, and the girl next to me said to me, "I wish Hitler had done a better job." So instinctively, without even thinking about it, I stabbed her with my pencil, and a piece of lead came off in her arm. We both had to go to Mr. King, who was the principal. And I remember that absolutely nothing happened to me. Here I had just assaulted my schoolmate, my desk mate, and actually injured her, but I did not get into trouble. I have no idea what he talked about or what he said to us, but all I know is that it was, that stayed in my memory. And I still remember her. I remember her name. I remember what she looked like. And when I think about it as an adult, you know, I think that she had poverty and abuse written all over her. But, you know, there were class issues and race issues in those days, in our time, but we just had no understanding at that time of what was going on. Then, okay, I just talking about Muizenberg Junior School still. My house, I was in dark blue. There were 3 houses. There were dark blue, light blue, and gold. And we used to have our sports on the field. We used to walk with our banners and walk from junior school along the railway line to the field along Sunday, where we used to have our sports days. And our sports day, it was also the same field where later all the teenage guys used to play rugby there. There was a rugby league, and we used to go and watch rugby on the field as well. And it was lots of teenage boys were in the group. Among them, I must say, I wanted to mention, it was in cross religion. It wasn't only like Jewish kids. And I just want to mention Nikki, because Nikki was integral, and there were others as well who were all friends, and he's still, as far as I'm concerned, integral to our Muizenberg community. Other friends that I have to mention, there's my neighbor was Cedric, and I understand why so many people have spoken about him in past talks, and probably will talk about him in future talks, because Cedric was a legend in his own time, and he really was a force. He was the first person that I knew to put playing cards in the spokes of his bicycle as a kid. And so when you rode your bike, it sounded like a motorbike. Well, kind of, not really, but you know what I mean. And then he also was the first person that I knew to shave his head so his hair would grow back better. And he used to walk around with an handicap cap. And also he and Nettie were the first people that I knew. I think that they were the first people in Cape Town for sure to start a commercial tie-dye t-shirt business within the 70s. And Nettie had just come back from Europe and brought the idea with her. And Cedric, of course, was a very willing partner. So the two of them used to spend, like our backyard line was absolutely filled with dry t-shirts, drying, beautiful tie-dye t-shirts, which they used to package. And I know that they sold them to Garlics for a while until that gig ended. But Cedric also used to have the best backyard braais on Sunday nights. But I was never invited, I was the kid. So, but Stan used to go and some of the other guys, and they'd have their backyard braai, and I used to stand on my side of the wall and watch them and get past little morsels of steak. And I just learned about the marinade of oil and tomato sauce and Worcester sauce. I learned it from Cedric's backyard braais. Muizenberg really, as we all know, had so many characters, and I always thought that a documentary could be made of the characters that from Muizenberg. There was Archie Lear, who everyone knew in the community, and he used to hitchhike everywhere. And I took a few lessons from his book, and I used to also hitchhike quite a lot in my youth, usually with my Weimaraner dog Lucky, that used to choose my rides and keep me safe. Other people that made quite a big impression on me were the teachers that we had at Muizenberg Primary School. And one in particular, I remember her name was Mrs. Grunlin. I think she was the Standard 2 teacher. And she used to buy inhalers, asthma inhalers, for a little girl in my class. Her name was Alicia. And Alicia, she had a barrel chest and she was really sickly, and her parents couldn't afford the medicine. And Mrs. Grunlin used to buy her the medicine. And then there was Mrs. Prin, who was our teacher in Standard 1. She was very flamboyant, and she had hair like this, and she was just this very fashionable and flamboyant woman. And I remember one day, must have been March, there was a knock on the door at school, and one of her former students walked in. It was a varsity student selling Sax Appeal, which was the rag magazine. And I don't know how or why I remember, but it was Basil Sachs. So if anyone knows him, they can just check with him if that's the case. Another teacher we had was Miss Hickman. Her name was Carol Marquer now. She was our teacher in Standard 5, and the most incredible woman who transitioned us into our teenage years. And many of her pupils are still friends on Facebook today. It's actually remarkable to have that strong relationship with our teachers. Then also at school, there was the folklore of the unrequited love that Miss Rooney had for Mr. Bishop. That was folklore of our school. Mr. Bishop was this very good-looking Standard 5 teacher, and he often used to walk around Muizenberg Beach off duty. But basically, there was this tapestry of incredible people that I remember from my youth that all made up the picture of Muizenberg in those days. Then there was Benjamin Bennett. I mention him because he had a profound influence on my life, and I'll tell you how. I know that Hedy talked about him last week. You know, he was a journalist at the Argus, and I used to watch him walk home from work. You know, we lived on Muizenberg in Windermere Road, and he lived on Windermere Road as well. And he used to walk past our house every evening after work with his newspaperman hat low over his head, and he was a crime reporter in those days. And I always used to think, wow, you know, he must have such good stories to tell. And I also wanted to work for the newspapers, which I subsequently did. So I joined. I went to the Argus Cadet School after university, and then I worked for the Argus. It was called the Argus. I think it's back to being called the Cape Argus now, the Cape Times, and I wrote sometimes for the Weekly Mail, and then I joined the Financial Mail as well. The Jewish community, when I think back, there was fundraising was always a big feature within the community. And I remember Ray Cohen walking from house to house, always coming to collect the blue boxes and the Glendale box. She would come in, sit, have a chat, count the money, and then give a little receipt in from her book. She was always a very tireless worker in the community, always. I remember my mom was always on the North Zion committees, and they used to do the fairs at the pavilion and have rummage sales. There was ongoing fundraising the entire time. I remember. Also, my dad was on the board of the Chevra Kadisha, so I always knew he died in our community. There were calls at all hours of the night, and it was just part of my life growing up. 1967 was the year of my bat mitzvah and also the Six-Day War. And I'll never forget, it was, I know that the war broke out on the 5th of June, 1967. And our bat mitzvah, Shavuot that year was the 13th of June. So I think our bat mitzvahs would have been going to happen the Sunday after the 13th of June. So needless to say, there was just frantic phone calls between all the parents because they were talking about what do we do? Are we going to cancel the bat mitzvah celebrations? And I also remember there were volunteers who came around to collect jewelry and precious items to raise money for Israel. But needless to say, we did have our celebration. The 6th day was miraculous, and the bat mitzvah party went on. As a young teenager, I worked several summers and Saturday mornings at Tocker's Pharmacy. And Gina and Solly were very, very close friends of my family. So Jean's there, I just wanted to mention that. It was the late 60s, and I was friends with quite a few hippies from Muizenberg Corner. And I remember one Saturday, one of the people from Muizenberg Corner came over the road to Tocker's and wanted to buy a bottle of Romular cough mixture. They called it Romula. So I said, no, sorry, it is a prescription cough mixture. So they weren't going to get high with a little help from this friend. And also, I had another job when I was a teenager at Oblowitz Brothers. You know, Phyllis and Ivor Oblowitz lived across the road from us. And I sometimes worked summers at Oblowitz Brothers in Salt River. I sold clothes in the men's department, but I used to sneak over to the women's department and look behind the curtain at all the beautiful imported dresses. You know, they came from Italy and the States. And I just remember feeling how incongruous it was to have this high fashion store in the middle of Salt River, this bustling Salt River. It was quite interesting. But the Oblowitzes also were very involved in the community, and I remember they were involved in Lions and other community organizations as well. On lovely winter's days, after Stan got his license, we used to drive down to Balmoral Beach and park in the parking lot and to see who was at the beach and what was going on. And Bobba used to come with us. She used to sit in the front of the car. And I remember one day, one of the hippies from Muizenberg Beach came over to say hi to Bobba, and he, like, headband, beard, beads, the works. And on the way home, Bobba said to me in her accent, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And then one day, two long-haired hippies came to visit me, guys, at home. So Bobba opened the door and she looked from one, looked to the other, looked back and forth, and she said, come in, girls. And I thought I was mortified, but that was her sense of humor. The common thread, I mean, in my days of being called fatty, primary school, high school, hippie days, the common thread was shul. And that really, some of the stories about shul, I mean, I had very many happy times there. My dad was always involved in the community, and from my earliest days, in fact, my entire life, he was on the board and chairman of the Talmud Torah. He was chairman or president of Muizenberg Shul, and then he and my mom in later years were life honorary members of the Shul. So I've got a very deep and long history with Muizenberg Shul. In the days of packed services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, us little girls used to sit upstairs on the steps and just admire all the beautiful hats. And it's the first time I saw fox furs, and it kind of freaked me out, seeing foxes draped around the shoulders of some of the ladies. And also I remember the smell of perfume upstairs. And Celia mentioned earlier that she remembered my mom's perfume. And that's really amazing. And downstairs, it was just a sea of talesim and top hats in the box. It was really very impressive, Muizenberg, in shul in those days. As kids, we used to play at the pond across the road and like be in and out of the services. And it was always associated with fun. And who could forget those 20-cent bars of chocolate? Those were the big ones in those days that we used to get at Simchat Torah, and they were very liberally handed out to us kids. In my teenage years, also, we used to have socials at the Herzl Hall, which was a big deal. My dad and the other men in the shul committee used to be in the kitchen at the Herzl Hall selling Fantas and Cokes and chocolates, and I was always hoping he wasn't watching me. And in the hall itself, there was Jimmy Retief and the Idiots and Shag and all the bands that were popular in our day. We used to play and we used to dance and have fun. And us girls in our little mini skirts up to our thighs at the time was always a big highlight of the Muizenberg socials. And then in more recent memory, I remember my mom, she was baking at the Herzl Hall with an incredible group of women on the Ladies Synagogue Guild, and to this day, Jean, Cecile, Joan, they carry on this legacy with great grace and incredible cooking. And I tasted some of that recently when I came to shul in Muizenberg in April. Had this incredible lunch, and these women are amazing. And they actually, when my youngest son had his bar mitzvah, we did it in Muizenberg at the turn of the century. And they also catered this fabulous brocha. And then what I also remember in the days, let me just see. Oh yeah, we used to have on Rosh Hashanah and Shabbat, we always used to have people. There was always room at the table. So I remember Friday nights at shul, my dad used to invite all the Navy guys who were stationed in Simonstown. So my mom never knew who was coming home for dinner on Friday nights. There was always room at the table for whoever came. And then on Yom Tov, on Rosh Hashanah, we invariably used to have first day lunch at our house. And there were always people from the community who didn't have a family member or somewhere to go. They always came to our house. So our parents really taught us by example. And also my dad, he used to give, when he was well into his 80s, he used to give lifts to shul to, as he called the old people. He said it not unkindly. He used to go and pick up people for shul on Saturday morning. And then he also used to give rides to, I mean, it was quite amazing. He was always part of the community and working in and for of the community as well. There was a lot of kindness and compassion in that community, because I remember as a kid as well, there were a lot of families, our next door neighbor and other friends and people in Muizenberg who took care of handicapped people, members of their family, and either physical or mental handicaps. And I just remember, for me, part of the community, I mean, the community included everybody, for better, for worse. And thanks to David and Gillian and people who spoke last week, I have to talk about Beta. As little girls, Nettie and I used to go to David's house, to his backyard for Beta, and Gillian was our madrid. And sometimes it was only me and Nettie in the backyard. And we used to, I don't think we wore our uniforms all the time. And I remember those Beta caps, the kind of angular caps that we wore on our heads, like sideways. And that cap, I must tell you, was the source of one of the biggest puzzlements of my entire youth, because I remember there was a game that used to be played called Crossed and Uncrossed. So what happened is one of the madrichim would take the hat off their head and just turn it every which way, inside out, upside down, look at it and consider it, and then very seriously pass it on to the next person and say, crossed or uncrossed. So we were all sitting in a circle. So then the next person had to take the hat and decide if the hat was crossed or uncrossed. And it literally took me years to unravel the clue of what this game was all about. It was actually a brilliant game. And then later we used to do Beta at the Ma'on in the Herzl Hall, and Alan was our madrich, and we had so much fun. So thanks to all of you guys who used to come out for us kids. Neville, I want to talk a little bit about my husband. So Neville, I'd met him in Noordhoek years ago when I was a teenager. And then in my mid-20s, I decided that I was going to be a full-time career journalist, and I wasn't interested in getting married. And I met Neville again, and he really liked my independence. And his connection to Muizenberg is that he is the first cousin of Jean's sister-in-law, Maureen. So a bit of Jewish geography there. So, I always thought, oh, why couldn't I have met, I never met him at Jean's house, funny enough. Like our paths always crossed, but not at that point. So Neville and I, in spite of my being independent and not wanting to get married, we got married December 1st, 1983, and moved to the United States in 1986. We have 2 sons and a fabulous daughter-in-law and a little granddaughter who's 23 months, and she calls me Granny Mush. So I didn't mention that my granny used to call me Mashallah by my Hebrew name, which is Masha Zelda, and many people to this day call me Mush. So then, just to close, I just wanted to say that, all of us who went to Muizenberg School know the song, We Are a Very Happy Band. And I just wanted to say that not everyone was happy, and not everyone had blessed childhood like I did. But I think that's for everyone, happy or not, or whatever our circumstances. Anyone who lived in Muizenberg or still lives there has memories that are happy, sad, and everything in between, and memories to last us a lifetime. And I certainly know that mine will. So that's really it. I've got, there's a lot one can say, but I think that kind of encapsulates things.
Marlene, thank you very much. Before we go through your photos, which I'm going to ask you to just tell us a little bit about what those photos are. I see that you could have been a chemist, you could have been a retail seller. You definitely could be a litigation lawyer by the way that you speak with your clarity of information and mind. But at the same time, I just hope you enjoy immigration law. Just putting it out there. So thank you so much. You were fantastic. I'm going to just open up and share the screen quickly, just so that you can tell us a little bit about these photos, and then we're going to go on to the next speaker. Just walk us through these photos quickly.
Okay, that's Stan and Net, me in the middle, Nettie and Stan. And this actually is every time we see each other and we're all together, we take a photograph that is a replica of the photograph that was taken when I was 1. So if you show a picture of the 3 of us, if you show the next photo, that was taken, I think, on Cork Bay, on the wall at Cork Bay Harbour.
Uh-huh. I'm going to try go into these photos. I don't know where they went now. We might have to come back to them at the end. Okay, I'm going to leave them for the end, Marlene, because they just disappeared off my screen. But
Okay.
don't worry, we'll come back to them right at the end. But thank you so much for talking. And I will give an opportunity at the end of both speakers for people to comment. Please write in the chat if you want to ask Marlene anything in particular. Marlene, I want to say that before I say thank you to you properly, you're one of the few people that I consider somewhat of a friend and a congregant in both San Diego and Muizenberg, because I met you in San Diego for the first time at the synagogue that I was a rabbi of, and then the second time in Muizenberg. So I hope that our paths always cross wherever it is in good health. And that was very, very delightful. And I will bring up those pictures right at the end. So please don't go away. Celia and Gerald, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Gerald's going to be doing the majority of speaking, but Celia might come in at various points. I'm going to take the spotlight off you, Marlene, just for the moment. And can you hear us, Gerald and Celia? Just unmute yourselves, just to make sure that we can hear you. And then we're ready to go. I'll read in the meantime. Colin Shapiro said, "What a great talk." If anyone wants to get onto the databases, please write to muizenberg.shul@gmail.com, and you'll get all the recordings and you'll get the newsletters, etc., etc. Celia, I'm waiting for you to get off mute. You know how to do that. It's just in the corner. You press the little button with the microphone. That's all you have to press. And other than that, once more, the end of the year is December the 28th. It's a Thursday until the next Thursday, which is the 4th of January. We will be having events almost every day. Lovely talk and great memories as well to Marlene over there. Okay, Celia, I'm going to have to ask you, just go onto your screen and just unmute yourself on the actual Zoom screen. Don't know why we're having technical problems again. Okay, so in the meantime, I'm going to show everybody just an idea of what the end of the year looks like. I am waiting for Celia and Gerald to unmute themselves. I know that they've got a black screen or something. If we can't do it today, Gerald and Celia, we'll have to wait till next week. I'm not sure what the issue is over there. Why don't you try and reboot? Why don't you try go out and then go back in on the original link in the meantime? I think that's a good idea. Just try to do the whole thing again. I will try buy you some time over here. Marlene, let me just see if I can bring up your photos. Don't know where the software went. One moment. Here we go. Okay, Marlene, just unmute yourself if you don't mind. Can you still see my screen?
No.
No, okay. So let me share screen again. Okay. So there, I've got your screen, Marlene. Just unmute yourself and just tell us you've shown us this one. Let's go to the next one. What's this one?
Okay, that's when I was 1. It was a photograph of me in the middle, Nettie and Stan. And we replicate that photograph whenever we see each other. So we've got that same photograph over the years in different cities. And that's just our signature look, our signature photo of the 3 Davis kids.
Okay.
That's me, Nettie, and my mom on Muizenberg Beach, of course, at low tide, having a fabulous walk. That's my mom and dad in their beach hats. They were always at the beach. They were always walking on Muizenberg Beach, and people probably, they didn't know who they were. I mean, most people knew who they were, but this is a typical look of my parents.
Okay. Great. Well, I see, thank you for that. I see that Celia and Gerald are with us. So Celia, oh no, you just muted yourself again. You unmuted and then you muted again. Do it again. Do it again what you just did. There we go, Celia. Okay, excellent. So now I'm going to stop screening. Thank you, Celia and Gerald. Can you hear us? You just muted yourself again, Celia. No, you're on mute again. Don't worry, don't worry. Everyone's your friend, including the computer. Just click. There we go. Don't do anything else now. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Well done. Hallelujah. Okay.
You're welcome.
Gerald and Celia, you know that I love you very, very much. And I do appreciate your technical dilemmas because my parents and other people in that generation have similar things. And you don't have to be embarrassed. Just embrace who you are and love yourselves for who you are, because everybody loves you for who you are. Celia and Gerald, thank you for being here. It's taken 2 or 3 weeks to get you here, but you finally are here, and I'm sure you're well worth the wait. Gerald, I'm going to ask you maybe just to step a few centimeters back, just so that we can see your beautiful face as opposed to right in front of the computer. And then that's a little bit better. And then now we are all yours. Please go ahead and share your memories with us. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. Are you all right there? Okay. I'm going to talk, if I can, just off the cuff. So anything that I do, it might be like a roller coaster ride, but that's fine. So I'm going to divide the 3 things into three sections. The first one would be me growing up in Victoria West, because that's the first, say, 10 to 12 years. Thereafter, I sort of had to do a pharmacy. In other words, I had to go to school and to college. In other words, that would be another 10 to 12 years, and the last one would be as I'm running a pharmacy as a qualified pharmacist. So I'll take little bits and pieces, but I'm going to mix it up. So I'll go forward or backwards. So there'll be little incidents in between of the people that I came across or the people that I met. So I'll start off with a Victoria West being the kernel, because obviously being there growing up there for 10 to 12 years, as I mentioned. Do you need to have a look at the photograph of that, or do we do that at the end?
Your choice.
Right.
I think just keep talking, and then maybe at the end show us the photos.
Okay. At the end.
At the end. Okay. All right. In Victoria West, because everything comes round at the end of it, that's going to be the common denominator. In Victoria West, obviously, if I grew up, if I was 6 months old or 9 months, I don't think I can remember much of that. But the last couple of years, the last, say, between when I was 5 years old. Sorry?
Gerald, I know that voice.
Yeah, keep going. It's actually Alan Berman. He obviously knows you, but I've just muted him just because you're the speaker at the moment. Keep going,
Berman.
Oh.
Okay, he's gone now.
Gee whiz, that's like a nightmare coming back. Anyway, so I can't remember the formative years, obviously when I was 3 or 4 years old, but once I got to about 5 or 6 years in Victoria West, the neighbors that we had were the Pinar family, and the youngest of the boys is Kobus Pinar. He was about 6 weeks or 7 weeks older than me, and obviously we played sport together. We did whatever we did, and we had an orchard in our at the backyard there. And obviously, in summer it was boiling hot, and in winter it was freezing cold. So there was even snow in the winter months. But living on the side of the mountain, he took me on the banks of the not the river, but going up the mountain, of what the little dussies used to sit on the rocks and sun themselves, and they showed me even the aardblommer, the plant that it would only grow in the dusk. So you would put a bucket over it and let the plants sort of show what it looked like. And obviously in summer, we played sort of soccer together. We would take the big bags of oranges. We would just take the netting and put up little soccer sort of the goals. And then obviously with the Anstey's, we were at the bottom bottom of Victoria West. The main road went all the way through right until the top, and that's where the Anstey's virtually ran the town. They had their own Victoria West rugby team. They won a lot of trophies, etc. And in that team, the captain of that team was a guy called Muizzies. He's the all-time greatest rugby player that South Africa ever had, and he used to come into my dad's Victoria West handelshuis, which was a general dealer. And my father obviously didn't know, he just knew who Muizzies was. That was before my time. And the fast forwarding it, Michael Anstey eventually got hold of him and gave me his phone number. And I contacted him, and we paid him 2 visits. He lives in an estate in Constantia alongside the New Zealand embassy. And we went to see him, and he's now 84 years old, and he's got Springbok rugby jerseys all over the place, each one for a different occasion, one for a presentation, one for if he's meeting people. It was the most phenomenal thing. We went to see him twice because the museum that he had in Victoria West of all his memorabilia, he's brought most of it with him to Cape Town. And we went to see him. Took my son, because Kevin couldn't believe that we made contacts with him, because he's almost like an icon in the true sense of the word. And we took him there, and we've been there a couple of times, and he's just the hospitality and everything. I mean, he would even walk to the car with his stick and help me into the motor car and I was battling with my little walker and going, and he helped me to. It just shows you that compassion, and no matter how big and strong he is, he's still got that. And getting back to the rugby blazer, Alan Skeen is Muizenberg's first and only rugby Springbok ever. And when I mentioned that to Muizzies, he says to me, Alan Skeen is the only one that tackled him so hard that he remembers it to this day. And he played with him and against him. So it just shows you how all the things emanated from Victoria West, went all the way around and back and forward again. So what I'm going to do, if that's possible, is to take those 3, how can I say, the areas that I've spoken, just take 1 or 2 little instances therein and mix it up. It'll whatever comes to mind, I'll talk about it. Let's take the first one. When I had to go, when my parents said to me, I'm not going to become a farmer. I'm not going to run the Victoria West handelshuis. What I must do, they're going to send me to Cape Town. I was going to start learning my bar mitzvah and all that type of thing. So they put me and let me stay with my granny, which was in Thaxter Road in Lakeside. So the only way one could go to school was actually walk to the Lakeside station, get onto the train and get off at Muizenberg station. Just 2 stops, because one couldn't walk that whole distance with your top bag, etc. So while I was sitting on at Lakeside Station, I had my set square and everything. I was doing a drawing of one of the products, one of the models that we had to do. And as I was sitting there with my board and everything, doing the drawing, I see one of the matric pupils walking towards me. And he sat down next to me and asked me what I'm doing. So I told him I'm doing a woodwork drawing. I need an isometric view. So he said, give it to me, I'll do it for you. So he did it, and his name was Mark Hoffman. He played fullback for the school, etc. And when I went during breaks, he always used to, say hello to me, call me over. He almost like, I was so almost everything Afrikaans, and then to go suddenly into a new culture, he almost like taught me what importance it is for one person just to give it a little hand up. And suddenly, I sort of went all the way through to matric, but with that sort of confidence that there is someone to sort of help you along the way. So that to me was an amazing sort of thing. And then also with let me just try and go the other way. Yeah, when I qualified, I had to do 2 years apprenticeship, which I did at Vineyard Pharmacy in Claremont. The first year you get paid a little bit as a trainee, and the second year you get a little bit more, and you can do much more work on as that pay, and then you can be qualified. But that, even although I am qualified, I still had to do that 2-year apprenticeship. So while I was at Vineyard Pharmacy, when you walked at the back of the pharmacy, there was like a little, you walk down the steps, and that's where the scooter drivers were at the back of the dispensary. So I went there and I see they were busy wrapping up the Carlton toilet rolls individually. They were all, well, I think they're still packed them now, individually packed. I went down there and I said to them, you know, these don't look like a rugby ball to me. So they said to me, okay, I said, if I kick it and it lands up on the roof, is it possible that you guys can go and fetch it for me? Because otherwise I can't. I went, no, they said it'll never go onto the roof, never about to kick it. So anyway, I stood back, saw that the well wrapped, etc., and I kicked it, and it just disappeared. We didn't know where it was, and we waited, and I said, they told me it's not on the roof. Anyway, eventually Con Friedland was the owned the pharmacy. He comes in with a toilet roll and he gives it to me, and he said, "Did you give it to me?" So what had happened? It went all the way over the main road right into Henselwood's departmental store. And obviously the manager there brought it to the pharmacy and he said, "What is this?" So he gives it to me, the Con Friedland brings the thing, and he says to me, "Did I get this thing to go over the main road right into the departmental store?" So I said, "Yes." And I looked at it and I said, "That's amazing. There's not one single mark on the road at all. It's impossible." That, no, he said, that's what he brought it. And so I said, it's actually amazing. So he says to me that, "Do you realize this is not a rugby field? You can't kick this thing." So I said, no, I do realize. I'm sorry, but to me, it's absolutely amazing. That to me, that was almost like the highlight of actually doing my apprenticeship at Vineyard Pharmacy. At Rondebosch, things were even more exciting, because obviously working with the students for 10, 12 years, you almost got that same youthful thing. So when I came to Muizenberg afterwards, I almost brought that same culture with me. So we tried at Rondebosch, I sort of brought that same ethos to Muizenberg as well. And a lot of the things, when people used to come into the pharmacy and there were luminaries, icons, and I used to, people wouldn't recognize me as having any contact with these people. So that's why I always used to ask them to give me a little note. And I used to, that actually proved to the people that didn't believe what I said, show them that that's almost like starting a whole new collection. Now, for instance, as an example, Professor Barnard was in the pharmacy. He came into the pharmacy. Now, I can't just ask him to go and write a note. I mean, I just went up to him and I said to him in Afrikaans, "Professor, jy is mos van Beaufort West, ek is van Victoria West, ons is genoot." In other words, we got a common denominator. But nobody's going to actually believe me. You just write a little note. So I came into the dispensary, wrote a little note about digitalis, etc., etc. A whole new thing for me to sort of actually meet with these people and actually get them on a level that's the real person, not what the public actually see. And there were so many of those. I can't at the moment think, because it's all off the cuff. So if anybody wants to ask me any questions, maybe that will give me a chance to sort of diversify a bit. Okay, I'm ready.
Sure. Okay, so if anyone wants to ask any
Anybody
questions,
there?
please unmute yourself. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
us?
then
No, there's nobody there.
I can hear you. Can you hear us, Celia and Gerald? Hello? Can anyone
Yes, we
else hear
can
them?
now.
Yeah.
And we've
Okay,
got
good.
a black. Yes, we can hear you. I've got a
Okay,
black
good.
screen. Hello.
I heard, Gerald, that you're taking questions. Is that right? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions for either speaker at this point,
I'll have to
please ask away. I think maybe Celia and Gerald, maybe just step a few centimeters back to make your microphone a little bit clearer. I don't know if anyone else had that problem as well, but I will read. There's been lots of comments to both Masha, Marlene, as well as to you guys. Gerald, I know that you have so much, you've got a plethora of memories on your wall. tell me something about my own personal preference, surfing and the pharmacy. Do you have anything to tell me about one of your surfing memories or something happening in Muizenberg to do with surfing? That's my question for you.
Okay. All right. Let me, you just given me an idea what I think of, at the Muizenberg High School. The high school is now where the police station is on the up in the hill.
Yeah.
Now there was a chemistry practical that David Cole, he still is there, and he was taking us for a chemistry practical. So there was about 6 or 7 of the boys, and we in the chemistry lab, and it was about 1 o'clock. We had it at 1 o'clock at lunchtime. Anyway, so he took there was what do you call it, in the cupboard, he took out under paraffin. There's a potassium piece of potassium. So they had a tweezer, took out a small little, almost like a fingernail, little bit of the potassium, which was under the paraffin, which is a liquid. And once you took it out, it gave a little bit of an explosion. So anyway, so when he finished with that experiment, he sort of locked everything back into the cupboard and left. Then Aubrey Schneider. he took it out of the cupboard and took a big piece, almost like the size of a fist, and put it into the water, and there was an explosion that blew all the backdraft, pulled all the window frames right out. It all landed up on the playground. The police were woken up out of their stupor from the main road. In Cape Town, the people were resetting their thought the noon gun had gone off again. So they were resetting their watch. In other words, that shook the whole building. Eventually, there was just cloud and everything of the desk. Those people that were close to the window, those desks were sort of backdropped right out. So anyway, so Wally Gordon was the principal. He was an absent-minded principal, and his set work book, Gordon and Nisa, was used throughout the country as a reference set work book. So in other words, he was really an absent-minded professor, but a wonderful, wonderful guy. So he come in and just smoke-laden. The building was like just one layer of smoke, etc., etc. So he comes in, and he was almost like a ghost among all the smoke and everything. And he says, "What's going on here?" "Nothing, sir." "Who's in charge of this class?" "You are, sir." So in other words, the whole thing, and then he phoned up the police and he says, "With my, after this explosion, etc., can you tell me, my motor cars obviously went down the road and it's also missing." So I said, "Mr. Gordon, your motor car is at home. You walked to school this morning." So those little incidents is almost as vivid as anything else. And I mean, that's, if I can just think of little bits and pieces off the cuff, that's why you can give me an idea. If there are any questions, I might be able to link up on that.
Rabbi asked about surfing and your
about surfing. I never, so you asked me about surfing. I never, because we were on the beachfront and at Surfers Corner, I wasn't directly involved with the surfing, but because they have the Muizenberg, they broke the world record in having 93 surfers or 73 surfers on one wave, and it broke the world record. It was in the main newspapers. We did a movie of it. So those, from the surfing point of view, that Surfers Corner has become Muizenberg's greatest contribution to surfing worldwide. And obviously everybody is trying to sort of supersede that by saying it happened earlier, it happened afterwards. It's there as a world record of Muizenberg, having 73 surfers on one wave, and that's from surfing point of view. It's a wonderful place for people learning to surf, and even people like Sean Thompson, world-class icons that use that surfing corner. So the Surfers Corner has become, it's become indelibly. What can I put it to?
imprinted.
Imprinted on the surfing map. Even there's a rabbi that's also a great surfer. I won't mention his name, but I think people have sort of seen you with your surfing and everything, which is actually so up to date and so wonderful. That you can mix with the top and the bottom, and everybody is equal. Now that's phenomenal. So from the surfing point of view, that Surfers Corner is there wonderfully.
Well, Gerald, if you were talking about me, I can tell you I ain't no good surfer, but I've got a lot of belief, and that's what gets me through. Okay, good. Well, thank you, Gerald and Celia. I'm going to open up to anybody and ask anyone to comment on either Marlene Masha Stanger's speech earlier. I think it was Masha Zelda, if I'm getting it correctly. I can't remember. As well as for Gerald, if anyone wants to ask Gerald any question. Gerald's got I don't know if it's an officially photographic memory, but I would call it pretty photographic. He remembers details of everything that you can ask him. So I encourage anyone who wants to ask a question at this point, please just unmute yourself and let me know who you are so that I can make a video of you, a spotlight of you. So I'll give a second. I know that some people are sometimes a little bit shy. Maybe Nettie, if you've got anything to say to your sister, you're welcome as well, but no pressure. I'm just going to give a second because I know that sometimes people are a little bit shy. Does anyone want to say anything? Going.
Yeah,
Alan,
I want to
think
say
you wanted to
something.
Yes, who's this? Is this Mervyn?
Yeah, Mervyn.
Okay, let me just find you, Mervyn. One moment. Jackie, I know it comes under Jackie.
Under Jackie.
There you are, Jackie. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
all I
go for it,
want to
Mervyn.
do, what I want to do is tell you all about the incredible amount of work and good that Gerald has done for Muizenberg. And all you can do is compliment him for everything that he's done for Muizenberg. And people must be made aware of it. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Oh, that's very
So
Thank you
Mervyn,
very
on
much,
that
Mervyn.
note, Mervyn, maybe give us an idea. Mervyn, maybe give us an idea.
Well, he's one of those that is responsible for that walk along the beach all the way to St. James.
Gerald, are there any stories about that walk to Cork Bay?
We've gone off.
Mendel Cafe.
Yeah, with Mendel, we were sitting at the Empire Cafe some time ago, and Mendel Kaplan says, "When you finished, I'd like to talk to you." And then he said, "If I get the people from Muizenberg, the businesses, etc., he walks to Dalebrook in the mornings, and we're very much like the business. He'd match us rand for rand, and that's how it actually started. And we got the Mayor's Award for the improving the environmental fabric of Muizenberg and St. James. So that Muizenberg St. James walkway all started with Mendel Kaplan throwing out the challenge that the local businessmen and the local community. So we put benches up there, etc., etc. So that whole walk started with Mendel Kaplan, and he did it so well of putting out a challenge, and we actually came up for the challenge, and we were there. So in a nutshell, what Mervyn's saying is okay, but I don't want to take all the credit because I was almost like the catalyst for it all. Okay, thank you, Mervyn. But you're still number one. Don't worry. What I would like to do I said the previous speaker mentioned Cedric Kushner. Now, Cedric was actually amazing. He had his own rugby team called the Spurs. And we used to have, once a year, we used to have that Muizenberg Old Boys playing against the Spurs, which was like almost like, and Max Bay was like an occasion second to none. But anyway, we were hitchhiking, myself and Barry Lockridge were hitchhiking opposite Checkers on the main road. And Cedric Kushner came past and he said, can I join you? And I said, yeah. I mean, even if he was not against us, but a competitor, he got into the car and we got a lift. And I was sitting in front, and Cedric and Barry Lockridge were sitting at the back. So the driver says to me, "What are you doing?" So I said, "No, I'm a third year pharmacy student." To the back, and he said to Barry Lockridge, "And you?" So I said, "No, I'm third year accountancy." And he looked to Cedric and he said, "And you?" So I said, "I'm third year standard 6." but anyway, he went to France and he became a boxing I'm a boxing promoter, and he had Mike Tyson and everything. He was like an icon in the boxing world. And then eventually, I think things that everybody sort of started taking everything away from him, and he sort of almost like died penniless. But he was an amazing character, absolutely amazing. Okay, is there any more that would
Wonderful.
stimulate
Marlene,
my
I'm going to
memory,
make
just
you
to
a
take a little
spotlight as
incident from
well.
here and there? So
Does anyone have any comments to either speaker? Anyone else? You don't have to, just giving the opportunity, that's all.
I just want to say it was a wonderful speech, both of you from your different aspects. And I have to say that Marlene, since I'm your sister, I'm saying that you gave a very typically human aspect to all the characters that you spoke about and everyone. Your typical sympathetic, humanistic aspect.
Saying how.
Thanks, darling.
I would like to ask.
Sorry, can you
both of them
just
a question.
introduce yourself? Is this Farrell? Let me add a
Yes.
spotlight. Yeah.
Yes. I'm Farrell Hope. I lived in Muizenberg for my entire childhood, basically, and teenage life. And, I got to know these people. I didn't get to know Marlene, but my brother did. He was in her class at school. My brother, Jackie Hope. What I wanted to ask, seeing Marlene spoke first, is your husband still making these epic bicycle rides across the United States?
Yes.
Yeah, she never mentioned anything about that, but he makes amazing long distance rides by himself. It just makes me tired to read about the rides he makes. And Gerald, you did not mention anything about the Mask Theater. I lived opposite it for my teenage life in Muizenberg, and I'd really like to hear what got you into that and how you enjoyed it.
Wrong person.
What
How much you enjoyed the mask.
what happened? I've just been shocked into reality. If you can just give me that question, I'm recovering. Just give me that question again.
The Mask Theater, which was next to the False Bay railway station.
Yes,
Still is.
Yes, I lived opposite that theater when it was a theater. When it was a bowling
bowling alley.
Whatever a bowling hall is, bowling lanes too.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, how did you come to open it as a theater, and did you enjoy doing that?
It's not you.
No, but
Celia, you did that.
Okay, can I answer that?
Yeah, Celia, go for it. Just come onto the screen, Celia. Come a little bit right. Yeah.
Am I there? I can't
Yes.
see.
Yeah.
Black
Yes.
screen.
No, now we can see.
Thank you. Basically, when Gerald and I got married, just before we got married, actually, I was studying drama and I wanted to be on that stage. I'd seen the theatre and I wanted to be on that stage. And I went to see Bertie Stern. I had a lot of guts in those days. I went to see him and I said, Mr. Stern, I want to act on your stage. What is your name? I said, Celia Shapiro. Miss Shapiro, he was very formal. He said, you need to do backstage work before you can put your foot on stage. So I said, but Mr. Stern, I want to act. I don't want to be backstage. No, but you've got to do it that way. Anyway, that's how I met him. And from then on, the Mask Theatre became part of my life. So when Bertie was the one who opened it in 1959, that was when it started. And yes, you're right, it was a bowling alley. And somebody said it was also at some stage a skating park, rink, whatever you call it. So Bertie he had a dramatic society called the Southern Peninsula Dramatic Society. And they used to meet at the Sawas building. I don't know if everybody knows where the Sawas building is. It's near the Main Road Bowling Green on that side. And basically that was his clubhouse, that was his concert place, his place, and he wanted a theatre desperately for Amdram, for amateur dramatics. Anyhow, I was walking past this bowling green one day, which was in bad repair, and he said to his brother, I think, I wish I could have a theatre. And his brother said, this is the perfect place. Make them an offer, keep it low, and see what happens. And apparently he made a ridiculous offer. They sold it to him. And they built this lovely community theatre.
2 shillings and 6pence he offered. And they accepted it.
There you go. There you go. Gosh, I didn't realize it was that little. Wow. Anyway, it thrived, and I got involved properly in the mosque on a committee in the 80s. And then I was acting chairperson. And while I was acting chairperson, in 1997, the theatre burnt down. It was the 10th of November, 1997. It burnt down completely. It was an electrical fault. It was a total shock to everybody. And as I was the acting chairman, the television people shoved a microphone in my mouth and said, what are you going to do? And amid floods of tears, I said, we're going to build it again. I had no idea how. Anyway, Mrs. Joan Lindbergh, who's been very, what's the word I want? When you're very kind, you know what I mean?
She was a patron.
And she was a patron and very generous. So she decided that she was going to offer us R1 million if we could if we could put in the difference. Within 2 years, we'd raised the money and we had a spanking new theatre, which it grew in leaps and bounds. I started working there as a manager, and it grew in leaps and bounds. And unfortunately, COVID put a stop to everything, not only at the mosque, but a lot of things. So after the COVID pandemic, they're trying very hard to resurrect it, and they're putting in some brilliant shows. So they've done internal decoration, but I don't have anything more to do with it. I've done my bit, and it's a very, it's got pride of place in my heart, you know, forever. So I don't know if that's answered your question, Farrell, but that's what happened.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Can I ask Gerald something? Gerald?
Yes, Hetty, can I highlight you, Hetty? Yeah.
Gerald, what about that place upstairs over the chemist shop where you have all these treasures, these journals, these books, the history of Muizenberg, all the memorabilia that you've cut out and stuck into scrapbooks and saved for posterity? Because I think that it's in itself is a treasure.
Yeah, I've got those. Celia's just going to get one here to give you an example. Yeah, no, I've got those. Those are.
This is the size of the book. Can you see that? That's one book. Yeah. There are at least 7 of these filled with personalities. And I'll just take, okay, so it happens to be ballet. That wasn't done deliberately. But there is Yanni Bucas, I think. Somewhere, I don't know if you can see
Every
that.
article cut out and pasted into these books. I mean, it's just incredible. It's a history of Muizenberg.
So interesting.
Elaine, didn't he write a book?
Eddie Davis.
And he's very quiet, he's very shy, but he did it.
Yes, yes.
Well, say something.
But Gerald was an enormous help, not only in producing material to put in the book, he sold the book, hundreds and hundreds of copies. He really was.
Yeah, well, what Mervyn was saying, I guess, is true. Gerald, you've got a lot of hands in a lot of things, it seems.
He was a great part of Muizenberg.
Yeah, that's that.
So Jackie,
way,
I can see Jackie. Yeah, go ahead, Gerald.
And Marlene had the most marvelous mother. And I think of her very fondly, our conversations on a Tuesday evening. She was in the old age home, and we used to chat, and she used to give information about Muizenberg Schule and the committee and what went on there. It was really interesting. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. She had much to offer.
My late mother-in-law was very, very good friends with Pearl, very good friends. And I met her a few times. And as I say, not only did I love her perfume, but I loved her as a person.
I think
Hello?
Mervyn wants to say
Everybody's
something.
seen the nice
Gerald, you
Yes,
first,
Can
then
I just-
Mervyn.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to tell you that Gerald's
Yes.
son has written a book as well.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
let him
Yeah.
to
The
talk
rugby
about that
coach,
as
yeah.
well.
They won when they won the. Okay, when they won they won the Varsity Cup in 2014, and in the last they were down in the dumps. In the last 7 minutes, they produced magic. So he wrote a book. Always believe in magic type of thing. So those 7 minutes when they came from nowhere, it was the greatest comeback of all time under that and in that sort of competition. And he wrote a book, and we got the book obviously. So wherever he goes, he loves himself. So he actually takes the book and a book and a mirror, so that so that he can make sure that he's in the limelight type of thing. So no,
He has just landed in Budapest. I ask you, they're playing. What's the name of the Zagreb? Something? They're playing them on Friday or something. So yeah, yes, he got all his rugby interest from his dad. I have to say.
No, but the thing is,
I think we've got a question, Gerald.
I sort of okay, I'm ready.
I think it's Barry. It says Rory, but
Don't
I
be
think
shy.
I'm pretty sure that's Barry over there.
Hi. Firstly, hi, Mash and Nettie. Lovely to see you guys. I don't really have questions to ask you, but you were all of you very important in my life. Gerald, I got two. I wonder if you could just mention you were captain of Muizenberg Old Boys, and you used to play Muizenberg Spurs against Cedric, and 10,000-20,000 people used to pitch up. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that. And also down the road, the gym down in the garage. Both Nettie and Gerald lived probably within 100 meters of me, left and right. So
yeah.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, no,
Let's hear about the gym.
Oh.
He's asking about the gym.
Yeah, the gym. What we did is we got some. I think it was Joseph Davis had some weights, and then we formed a little club. And we downstairs, we stayed in Dartmouth Road, and there was a downstairs basement. So we used that with parquet flooring, etc. My father actually went mad every time he heard the weights being dropped. So we got a big mat, and we did gym there. We had equipment. We went off. We had lap machines. In fact, I've got photographs of all those things, and it was actually amazing. Sort of, we built ourselves up because we were like little puny little nothings, and then now we built ourselves up. At least we could match anybody, be it on the rugby field or be it playing bok or whatever it was. It was phenomenal. So that little gym, sort of, guys like Anthony Tolman is lost, which Celia promised to send him, which you haven't done as yet.
Here come the tail.
So anyway, so that is the gym. It was some I think they had snooker tables. I can't remember what they had before.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So and also just come to mind now. When I was in the pharmacy, I used to used to say good cop, bad cop. So I'll give you two little instances. Let me do this one first. When I was sitting at the thing and I had to phone up people because they haven't paid their account, etc., and I'm right there with him what's happening. So Mike Walker, the one that's done all these.
Eddie will know him.
Yeah, Mike. He was standing there, and he has me talking to a Mr. Whittaker. No, we can't actually access your local authorities' medical aid. We've done it twice, and they won't do it unless you got your password. And all you've got to pay is just the small little co-payment. We can't open it. We can't bypass that. Talks eventually. I said to him, I'll tell you what we'll do, Mr. Whittaker. I'm going to send my driver to pick up your TV set. And we'll bring it to the pharmacy. And once you've got that sorted out, then you can get your TV set. So Mike Walker says, I better go and pay my account. He's already on W. That was classic. And the other one, I'm just trying to think when, in Springbok, which is in Springbok, there was a pharmacy that was closing down, and they were going to send a truck down when anybody wants to buy any of the mortars and pestle, desks, etc. And we were on the main road in Muizenberg on the corner, and we were going to actually move across into the Balmoral building. So I phoned up David Price, who was a retired airline pilot, and I said to him, we have to fly to Springbok, which is in the Northern Cape. So he said, no, he's got a pilot, a qualified pilot. He needs a certain amount of airtime, so he won't charge you anything. So we went, myself and Sandy went to the airport, we got into the plane, and he took off to Springbok. So he says to me, what do you think? Would you like to try? So I said, yeah, just tell me. So he says, but it's not a matter of me. I'm putting it on. So every item that I give you, if you want to give it back to me, you've got to do one step at a time. So I said, okay, fine. So he gives me, I went left and I went right, I went up, I did the circle. I was better than Douglas Bader at the time. So anyway, so we landed there, and there was three beautiful ceramic lights. We want those, and he was going to send his truck down during the following week. So we sorted ourselves out, and we got back for him to fly us back to Cape Town. So we get into the plane, and he says to me, "Do you want to try again?" I said, "No. First of all, we're going downhill, and there's the sea on the left-hand side. I can't take that chance, and we're going downhill now, and we're going to go too fast for me to actually give you all the stuff back one at a time." So anyway, in doing that, what happened was that I gave it, and he took the plane, and his time what took to get to Springbok took it back, and that, as you can realize now, it's opened the thing for Top Gun, Maverick, because he sort of still being there in the wake of nothing. So that's actually a genuine story. So next time you hear about Top Gun and Tom Cruise, etc., that's very fun.
In Gerald. Lovely.
Okay,
Well, thank you, Gerald and Celia.
I think we've done.
Marlene, I'm going to go to you and just say if you've got any closing thoughts, and then Gerald as well.
So if anybody tells me that I can't fly with a plane that's there in black and white, so it's there, and I've spoken about because, yeah.
Gerald and Celia, I think we're going to wrap it up, but I'm going to invite Marlene to say anything if she wants to, and you too, Gerald, if you want to. But before I do that, I want to say thank you everyone for being here. I'm sure we've got people from all over the world. I know that some people were talking at 1 o'clock in the night in Australia. Marlene is at 7 a.m. in the morning. Well, now at 8:30 a.m. in the morning in San Diego. So between East Coast Australia and West Coast the United States, we've probably got about 70% of the world's surface covered. And we've got Annette in Tel Aviv in between, and us in Cape Town. So I think we've got all the GMTs and other time zones covered. So thank you all for being here. Marlene, your talk was delightful, and Gerald, you are always humorous and insightful as ever. Marlene, do you want to say anything to the crowd on YouTube before we say our goodbyes?
Yes, the only thing I want to say is that some of you may not have known me, but I know your family. I actually knew everybody. I mean, my hobby one of the things I used to do was read the telephone directory. So I'm always wanting a person who wants the whole story about everyone and everything. So even if you think you didn't know me, I know you. That's it.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you so much. And always look forward to see you. And just to let everybody know, Marlene is considering coming all the way from San Diego to the centenary at the end of the year. And she lives a lot further than anybody else. I assure you, it's the furthest place on earth where Jewish people live, other than Hawaii, is California. So she's got a lot more of a journey to make, and she's considering it. So you should as well. Gerald, do you want to say anything? Last minute. Gerald, Celia, do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
No, I think we've lost audio over there. Okay, well, Gerald, Celia, you are delightful as usual. And look forward to seeing you across the road whenever I see you.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for being here. I'm seeing
Last chance.
Hami Reingold, I'm seeing Faye,
I
I'm
think the
seeing
common
Alan
denominator
Berman.
is the Muizenberg.
Yeah.
Okay. I just
Go
want
for
to
it,
say
Gerald.
thank you to you, Rabbi Ryan. I mean, what a fabulous innovation. I'm ashamed to say that I've only... okay.
I can hear you. I don't know, we're catching up.
Yeah.
That's quite funny. Okay, don't worry about it. We'll talk privately when I see you privately. Thanks everyone
Can you
for
hear
being
us
here.
Yes,
now?
I can.
Now
Is
we
the
can hear
question
you.
to me
Yeah,
now?
closing thought. Go for it.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, what did you want
No,
to say?
I was just going to say the common denominator is the Muizenberg shul, and symbolically, you know, when the whales come into the.
You can't hear you.
Okay.
We're listening, Gerald.
Who, Gerald?
Yeah, we're listening to you, Gerald.
Okay.
The common
Anything but the
denominator
shul.
I'm just saying
of
the
everything is the shul, the
common
whales.
denominator is the Muizenberg shul, and symbolically, you know, when the whales come into the bay to carve, and when it's Yom Kippur and they read about Jonah and the whale, and all those symbolic things, and even it's amazing that it always comes back to the shul. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's all coming back to the shul this year, 100
Well, let's
years.
carry on.
I think they
In
couldn't hear. Can
February
you hear us
24,
now?
we're starting the celebration in December, and look forward to see you all there. Celia and Gerald and Marlene, thank you so much, and thank you everyone else for commenting, and look forward
Did
to,
you
I
not
think we will have one
take it
last
to
one
mute?
next week. I will send everybody details, and thank you all for being here once again. Bye-bye, everybody. I'm going to go try get some light because load shedding is soon over. Cheers, everybody. God bless. Thank you, Marlene.
Bye.
Thanks, Gerald. Cheers.